I'm ready to do the feather bob colour technique now on Megan's hair. So one of the focal points I'll be looking at when designing her colour is the beautiful way the haircut sits around her features. It's a very strong line, but softly feathered at the sides. So I'm going to be using two colours in my foils today. One is a powder lightener and the other is a black. I'm going to be using the black in the foils to follow the hairline to create a nice shadow underneath the perimeter of this haircut. So after we've done the perimeter, we're going to be using a series of splices that we'll be using in a circular motion from the crown on the top of the head. And in one foil we'll be using the black, and in the other foil we'll be using the blonde, once again using back on back foils. Once we've done the splices with the foils, we're going to be using a lovely level 5 rich copper red between the foils all over the rest of her hair. So I'm just going to section off now where I'm going to be adding the black as the perimeter. And the best way to check whether or not the perimeter is enough to shadow the underneath the haircut is just to drop the first section and just see where the layers sit above that. That'll sit nicely to really create the depth underneath the haircut. Just clip that aside. And do the same in the fringe. And just remember, it just has to be the slight underneath sections just to give a little bit of depth. Okay, once that's sectioned out the way, we'll just go through and once again using splices. And just taking the black from the roots to the tips, just moving the client towards you and just popping her head down just so you can get the right projection with the foils. I'm going to do the fringe in two sections so that I can continue around to match the splices on the side. Megan's hair is very thick and very resistant, so it really pays to work the colour quite thickly and strongly into the hair on top of the foils. Just working around my perimeter. And to create a nice depth around the hairline like this, black doesn't necessarily have to be used. Using a nice rich colour at about a level 3 or 4 would also look nice. Just mirroring the other side. Okay, that's my perimeter. Now I'll just let the hair drop just to see the way the shape is created to where I start my foils. Megan has a natural parting in her hair, but I really want these foils to not come from a particular direction, but to really go with the hairline and the way the crown works to really spread and really splash the colour all through the top of the haircut. So I'm just going to stand behind the hair and just find the natural fall, and from my comb I'm going to pivot 45 degrees and start my first section 45 degrees from the parting. I'll do a black splice and a blonde splice and then slowly work my way in a pivotal circle around the crown. And if I just turn Megan around, you can see the weight line there. Once we colour this a lovely level 5 with the copper, the foils will just shatter over the top of the haircut. In doing these splices, they can be done two ways. The thicker the splice, the more obvious the colour, and also the length of the splice. So we can create quite a strong look by taking the splice quite long, or we can do it a little bit more subtle by doing the splice a little bit shorter. So I'll just be doing it in between to create a little bit more than just a subtle effect with the splices. Using my crown as my pivotal, my first splice will be powder, lightener, and then on top of that I'll do a back on back black foil. I want the blonde to dominate more in the foils, so when I do the black, I'll be just taking the foil a little bit finer, just to create a little bit of depth. It helps show the blonde up a little bit more. So I just come on top of that splice and do quite fine. Sometimes when you remove foils when doing black and blonde, you need to be careful that the dark doesn't wash into the blonde. So a few tips around that is to, first of all, take the black foils off and rinse them before you take the blonde ones off, and also to use cold water or coolish water to help stop the black colour from spreading through the blonde. So that's my first splice. I'll now move a pivotal section 45 degrees from that, and that will be my next splice. So taking the splice from the crown, if I use the crown as a pivotal, I make sure that I leave a circle of about 1 centimetre and take my splice from that little circle just around the crown area to the area of the hairline. Once again, starting off with a blonde. And keep uniform with the sections of colour that you do, the blonde being slightly thicker than the black. Then just taking a soft splice on top of that, a little bit finer for the black. So now we have the two splices pivoting around from the crown. Once again, from your comb, 45 degrees from there is my next splice. And the great thing about this colour technique, that once you come into the colour, the next time you touch up, if once you find the first splice, it's very easy to find the next series of splices. So it's a great colour to maintain. Coming through and taking my next splice as my dark. And to step out of the square when picking colour choices for this technique, having a full head colour of a level 5 and just some fine splices of black on their own looks beautiful, as well as just using the blonde on its own. So you can make a choice to get many different looks. So once again, from there, I'm pivoting to my next splice. And it's important just to move your client's head around just so that you're not bending, thinking about the posture that you're working with. Lay the foil flat so you can work along the head form. It makes it a little bit easier when you're applying your colour. And my second back on back foil, black. I'll just hold that section up, and if I let that drop with gravity, you can see that the colour will run into the feathering sides of the haircut. Just positioning the head so it's a little bit easy to work with. We're going to come from our last pivotal section, keep working on angles, pivoting around what is our pivotal point, the crown. And we keep working in the same fashion all the way around the head. Keeping the splices still a little bit finer in the black colour, just so they don't dominate the hair colour. They just add a nice little bit of texture within this colour technique. So my next pivotal point will be there, there, and keep working around to then lock into the first foil we did. Once again, with the shortness in the nape, once that foil drops, it'll just sit in a nice texture on the weight line. This technique is a fantastic technique to get the maximum result with minimal amount of work with your foils. Really working that colour in, because as you can see it's quite strong. So to really work the colour into the hair, you'll get a nice even result. So as you can see, we've finished our circular splices, and to really lock it in so we get an even pivot in between the foils, we just put a clip up there to lift the foils so it gives us a clean way to put our last splices. And that will create a perfect pivotal circle of foils around the crown. So come through, and with this splice I'm taking it fairly deep, just to about the top of the ear, so when that drops with gravity you can see the colour will pick up just above the perimeter of the hairline where we've put the black splice. And now our last splice, which will be the black one, and that will help connect the circle of colours. And when we take the clip out, all the foils lock neatly into place. And if I get Megan just to put her head back, you can see that the foils all work in a pivotal motion around the crown of the head. So we're going to process now, and we're going to bring the foils down to a nice lemon colour. And in between the foils now, I'm going to use a level 6 and a level 5, half and half copper, a really nice rich colour which will complement the blonde and the black foils. So I'm just going to do that application now. The feather bob colour technique's now complete. And so I'm just going to quickly run through, just to recap on the colour. Just around the perimeter, I've used 3 splices of black. And if Megan just puts her chin in, and just around the top, using pivotal foils around the crown, I've been using back on back 2 foils close together, one black and one powder lightener. So she'll process now, and then we'll come back a bit later and see the colour.